At Quinner Laboratories, a research team tries to use acts of affection to activate a protein they're studying. To impress her professor, a young scientist volunteers herself for the experiment in more ways than one. Philippe, a researcher, accepts a delivery from a UPS driver, a metal box. Nadine, another scientist, taps the box and makes an animal sound, which the creature inside mimics in response. Meanwhile, Christophine, the new PhD student, is organizing IV bags while listening to a recorded message from Professor Frederick, following his instructions and mouthing his words as she listens, clearly enjoying his voice. In the exam room, Nadine opens the box, revealing a baby penguin. Philippe realizes their tranquilizer gun is empty, so he asks Christophine to bring more darts. Since he can't remember her name, he calls out various names on the intercom that rhyme with Christophine until he gets her attention. Christophine quickly brings the darts, and they sedate the penguin, which goes limp. They check the penguin's health, and Philippe asks Christophine to name it. She chooses the name Gaston. Once they're finished, Philippe tells Nadine and Christophine to take the penguin upstairs. Nadine asks why he can't do it himself, and Philippe jokes that he doesn't want to freeze his private parts. Nadine then takes Christophine and the penguin to a secure elevator that leads to the main lab. Christophine's heart races when they pass Frederick's office. Nadine instructs her to enter the ice field, where they keep the specimens, while she monitors from the control room. As soon as Christophine opens the door, a simulated blizzard starts, and she gets disoriented in the storm. Nadine frantically works the controls to deactivate the simulated blizzard. Once the storm ceases, Christophine realizes she's standing in the center of the penguin habitat. She takes a moment to admire the penguins before gently placing Gaston down to join the group. Suddenly, the chick collapses, prompting Christophine to panic. Acting quickly, she begins administering CPR, much to Nadine's surprise, who finds the method unusual. Another colleague enters the control room, observing the young scientist's attempts to resuscitate the chick. After several tense seconds, Gaston revives, much to everyone's relief. Exiting the ice field, a visibly shaken Christophine is met by Professor Frederick Quignard. Noticing her distress, he tells her she's suffering from mild hypothermia and pulls her into a close embrace to share his body warmth. Christophine savors the intimate moment, but it is soon interrupted as the professor vigorously shakes her to stimulate blood circulation. As the situation escalates, he wrestles her to the ground to help raise her body temperature through increased movement. Pleased with her quick actions to save the penguin, Frederick praises her efforts and informs her that she's been selected for a more hands-on role in his project. Later, as they walk down the corridor together, the professor once again struggles to recall her name, playfully addressing her with various names that rhyme with Christophine. He quizzes her on the meaning of ppm, to which she correctly responds that it refers to a special protein found in penguins known to combat diseases, earning his approval. In the rodent holding area, Frederick requests low antibody mice from Siegfried to test the effects of ppm. Before leaving, Siegfried attempts to ask Christophine out for a movie, but she shyly declines. In a conference room, Frederick addresses the department heads, revealing that their American competitor has already gained approval for human trials scheduled for the next month. He stresses that to keep their lab operational, they need to produce tangible results and present compelling evidence to the ethics board to secure permission for human testing of ppm. When Frederick asks the team for any updates or ideas, they begin murmuring among themselves, clearly unprepared to impress their boss. Frustrated by the lack of progress, Frederick decides to continue his research late into the night, but his efforts seem fruitless. The next morning, he presents to the Board of Ethics, reporting that ppm is effective only with penguin genes. To adapt, they experimented by injecting the penguin genome into lab mice, and with the right stimulus, it showed promising results. Frederick claims they're on the verge of discovering universal immunity. Curious, the board members ask about the specific stimulus used, but Frederick fabricates a story, claiming that saboteurs stole their data. In reality, he was the one who damaged his own computer, using the story as an excuse to keep the findings confidential until the project is secure, ensuring their rivals can't undermine their work. He requests the board's patience and asks them to reconvene in a month. However, they only grant him 3 weeks. Later, Christophine heads to the ice field to feed the penguins and notices Frederick standing alone, deep in thought among the animals. When she exits, her colleagues reprimand her, cautioning that the professor needs space. Philippe expresses concern that the board might shut down their project, while Nadine fears they have already shattered Frederick's vision. Hearing this, Christophine reflects on how she can support the scientist she admires so much. Determined, she re-enters the ice field and calls out to Frederick, claiming she has locked herself inside and needs his help to escape. She then declares her willingness to make any sacrifice for the sake of their scientific endeavor. With determination, Christophine injects herself with the penguin genome and ppm, declaring that she fully understands the risks involved. She insists that she will work from within the ice field and keep everything confidential. Moments later, she collapses. When she regains consciousness, she finds herself enclosed in a fiberglass chamber with Frederick observing her. Having heard her declaration of commitment, he accepts her offer to become his secret test subject. Grateful for her bold decision, he thanks her, though he still mispronounces her name. The following morning, Frederick instructs Nadine and Philippe to continue their work independently while he conducts his own separate experiments. Philippe notices that a ppm vial is missing, prompting Frederick to take responsibility. Nadine becomes suspicious, embracing him with concern, fearing he might have put himself in danger. Frederick reassures them, explaining that he simply threw the vial in frustration but has since calmed down. Meanwhile, Christophine struggles to enter the correct passcode for the secure elevator. Fortunately, Nadine and Philippe exit the elevator and provide her with the updated code. Nadine and Philippe then gather the project team to inform them that each member will receive 6 mice for individual experiments. Siegfried, attached to the mice he raised, grows anxious, but the scientists frame the assignment as a competition to accelerate progress. Upstairs, Frederick briefs Christophine on his plan to identify the ppm stimulus, emphasizing the importance of their collaboration, he as the researcher and she as the subject. His words inspire her to proceed. To begin, Frederick conducts a thorough examination of her body, carefully taking photographs and measurements before drawing a blood sample. Despite the intensity of the test, Christophine relishes the attention until he requests urine and stool samples, momentarily breaking her enthusiasm. When Christophine returns with the samples, Frederick acknowledges that he may have been harsh, but she replies that she actually enjoyed the process. Feeling assured, he hands her a folder outlining his plan for finding the ppm stimulus. The folder contains a strict diet regimen, questionnaires, and his personal number, emphasizing that she must adhere to an ideal lifestyle for the experiment to succeed. The next day, their research intensifies as Christophine endures a series of tests, including mild electrocution and physical slaps. More samples are collected, and Frederick confirms that her body has successfully integrated the ppm. He then alters her diet to resemble that of a penguin and subjects her to a 20-minute ice bath, hoping the extreme cold might trigger the stimulus. Afterward, he massages her to combat hypothermia while venting about his American competitor. When Christophine awakens, she sees Frederick preparing to leave. She timidly asks if she could join him for dinner, but he reveals that he already has plans. Disheartened, she exits, tears streaming down her face. Outside, she encounters Siegfried, who is solemnly pinning pictures of his mice onto a corkboard. He laments that the next experiment involves placing even more mice into ice water. Out of the blue, he mentions that physical intimacy can reduce the risk of heart attacks, indirectly suggesting it to her. Initially, Christophine refuses, but eventually, the two engage in intimacy, their actions causing the mice cages to rattle. The following morning, Frederick examines Christophine's blood under a microscope and informs her that the ppm is now active in her system. He then asks her to recount everything she did the previous night. Hesitantly, Christophine admits that she slept with Siegfried. Frederick, detached, probes further, inquiring about the details, such as the quality and duration of their encounter. He concludes that physical intimacy stimulates the hormones necessary to activate the ppm. Satisfied with his findings, he schedules a meeting with the team. Frederick then injects Christophine with a syringe containing the influenza virus. To his surprise, the injection site shows no signs of bleeding or injury. Under the microscope, he observes that the influenza virus has no effect on her, proving that the ppm has rendered her immune to both illnesses and minor injuries. He announces this breakthrough to the team, and they applaud his achievement. Philippe asks how he accomplished it, and Frederick vaguely responds that he conducted experiments with mice, expressing gratitude to Siegfried. He instructs the team to induce mating among the mice to further their research. As Philippe and Nadine inspect the progress of the experiments, they exchange concerned glances, especially when they hear updates indicating their American competitors are advancing even further. The following day, Frederick is alarmed when he discovers that the ppm has become inactive in Christophine's body. Christophine suggests that repeated stimulation might reactivate it. Frederick proposes that she repeat her intimate encounter with Siegfried, but she refuses, explaining that Siegfried cannot be trusted with secrets. She suggests it must be someone discreet, with good stamina, and already working in the lab to avoid raising suspicion. Directly, she tells him that he should take on the role for the sake of science, and Frederick reluctantly agrees. They shake hands, agreeing that it's all in the name of research. That evening, Frederick takes enhancement pills before meeting Christophine. After their encounter, he sighs, disappointed that her ppm remains inactive. Christophine suggests they try again, but Frederick insists that she only had one encounter with Siegfried and demands more details about what they did together. The next day, Christophine provides printouts detailing the various positions she and Siegfried tried. Frederick is shocked by the number and complexity. Determined, they awkwardly attempt to replicate each position, but Frederick struggles, and both end up injuring themselves in the process. Meanwhile, in another lab, Philippe, Nadine, and Siegfried observe the unproductive behavior behavior of their mice. Philippe remarks that he thought mice mated frequently, but Siegfried explains they have specific schedules. Nadine suggests spraying them with pheromones to encourage mating. The trio applies pheromones to all the mice, causing Nadine to become lightheaded and giddy from the fumes. As Christophine leaves the facility, she notices that the receptionist and others she passes all seem to be looking at her with newfound interest. It becomes apparent that the pheromone procedure has had an effect on everyone, as it successfully stimulates the mice, and even Nadine and Philippe find themselves flirting. Sometime later, Siegfried approaches Frederick, asking what to do with the newly born mice. Frederick, preoccupied, dismisses him and continues walking until he hears noises coming from one of the restrooms. Curious, he knocks, and Philippe emerges with an awkward smile. Frederick pointedly asks if Philippe has managed to isolate the stimulus, and Philippe confirms they are getting close. Frederick reminds him that the board meeting is only 2 days away. Nadine exits the same restroom behind Philippe, prompting Frederick to ask their opinions on Siegfried's physical appeal. Nadine describes him as exciting, which visibly disappoints Philippe. Later, back in his lab, Frederick and Christophine have repeated their experiment multiple times without success. Frustrated and desperate, Frederick slowly approaches Christophine and kisses her passionately, leading to a more intimate and emotionally charged encounter. The following morning, Frederick finds Christophine still asleep, exhausted from their night together, which had been marked by genuine affection rather than detached experimentation. She apologizes for falling asleep, but he reassures her, telling her to rest as they still have the whole day to continue their efforts before the board meeting the next day. That evening, Christophine awakens, feeling lightheaded and uneasy. When she looks in the mirror, she's shocked to see her eyes have turned completely black. Alarmed, she gasps, and Frederick, who is in the ice field, hears her. He asks how she is, and she tries to tell him something's wrong. Misunderstanding, he assumes she's referring to the lack of progress in their research and expresses his disappointment, deciding he'll inform the team the next day. He then realizes she is struggling to say more, but when he presses her, she simply bids him goodnight. As Christophine leaves the lab, Nadine notices her crying and approaches to comfort her. Suspecting that the young scientist has developed feelings for Frederick, Nadine tries to soothe her, while Christophine avoids making eye contact. Nadine reveals that she once had intense feelings for someone, but had to maintain a platonic relationship. She advises Christophine to be patient and to say what the other person needs to hear. After Christophine departs, Nadine and Philippe monitor a pair of mating mice. At the critical moment, they take a blood sample and immediately analyze it, yielding extraordinary results. The next morning, Frederick gathers the entire team, prepared to deliver bad news. Just as he begins, Philippe and Nadine burst in, announcing that they've discovered that the PPM is activated when peak satisfaction is reached. Frederick is stunned by their revelation. The team compares their methods, and when they find they are the same, Philippe jokes that the professor's male mice weren't good enough, not realizing it was actually Frederick doing the experiment himself. Frederick quietly confirms their success, and everyone celebrates, ready to present their findings to the board. In his lab, Frederick tries calling Christophine several times, but only reaches her voicemail, making him worried. Later, when they present their results to the board, Frederick receives a standing ovation. News of their breakthrough spreads through newspapers and scientific journals, but they still need to figure out how to make the PPM effect permanent. Sometime later, Frederick, Philippe, and Nadine are observing the penguins in the ice field. Nadine discreetly tells Frederick that Christophine's doctor has submitted a sick leave notice for 2 weeks. She senses something between them and is worried something might have happened. Frederick assures her that Christophine will come back, though he's also worried and keeps trying to reach her without success. Meanwhile, Christophine wakes up to find her toes are now webbed. She looks down, confused by the sudden change. Later, the scientists discover that the PPM-activated mice have transformed overnight. Their paws become webbed and their body temperature rises, so they need to be kept on ice. Seeing this, Frederick rushes to Christophine's apartment using the key he got from her landlord. He finds the place dark and the floor wet, and soon he discovers her in a bathtub filled with ice. She asks him to get more ice from the fridge before he says anything. Frederick examines her hand and sees it's webbed, with her skin breaking down due to the heat. He urges her to come to the Arctic lab to find a solution, but she refuses, saying she won't be treated like a test subject anymore. She insists she doesn't want any more tests or to be seen by others. Determined to help, Frederick sneaks her back into the facility and places her in the ice field. In the cold environment, Christophine's skin starts to stabilize, and her color begins to return to normal. Frederick works urgently on the mice, trying to find a way to stop Christophine's transformation. When he checks on her, he sees frost forming on her arm, and she looks weaker. Despite this, he tells her he's making progress. Later, he finds an old picture of her from the first test and feels guilty about how much she's changed. Nadine then calls, telling him 2 of their mice have died, adding to his worries. Frederick visits Christophine again and asks how she is. She says she's fine fine, but he tells her the truth, that she's dying and he doesn't know how to help. Christophine suggests they go to Antarctica, thinking it might save her. Frederick tells Philippe and Nadine that he's going to the Antarctic base to move their space probe, saying it's too fragile for anyone else to handle. That night, he secretly moves Christophine in a box and places her inside a climate-controlled capsule. Before they leave, she insists on going alone, even though Frederick wants to go with her. Heartbroken, he watches as the truck drives away with her. Feeling guilty, Frederick goes to Christophine's old office and listens to a recording of his voice on her answering machine. He flips through his notes, all filled with photos of her, and feels the weight of her sacrifice. Unwilling to let her face this alone, he decides to inject himself with ppm. Eventually, Frederick walks through the icy Antarctic landscape, surrounded by penguins. He spots Christophine, who has transformed into a penguin-like humanoid. He shows her his own webbed hand, and she smiles, understanding that he chose to join her. They embrace, sharing their new life together. Otter, Frederick's team, is awarded the Nobel Prize for their work on human immunity. The audience applauds, and one member shows webbed fingers, hinting that they found a way to stabilize the transformation and share it with the world. As humanity begins to change, Christophine and Frederick happily swim together in the Arctic waters.